Hi, welcome back to Coffee Talks with Center for Experiential Learning. Today I have Amanda White with me from Adams and Martin Group. Amanda, would you like to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am a recruiter. I specialize in legal staffing. So I work with law firms and corporate legal departments around the greater St. Louis area to help with any opportunities, anything from entry-level positions up to more senior attorneys. So I can help with the interview process. Of course, we're going to go over that a little bit, but I can help get you in contact with some great firms and corporate clients of ours, and completely free service for any client or any candidate, which you would be. So, yeah, I'm just here to help basically.
Awesome, cool. So let's kind of get into our questions and see what kind of wisdom you have for us. Kind of talking about preparing for an interview. So, I guess in everything we talk about today, we'll kind of talk about per usual and maybe in the age of COVID, if you have
Oh,
any
yeah.
great insight to kind of add on to, your normalcy and then, what we're dealing with right now. So,
hmm
what are your best tips for preparing for an interview?
Okay, yeah. So, of course, preparing for the interview is such a big aspect of the interview itself.
Mhm,
So, with that being said, you want to, of course, do research. So, research the company, but also know who you'll be interviewing with.
mhm.
um, in individuals who you'll be interviewing with, they probably have a LinkedIn page that you can add them on. You shouldn't feel nervous to add them on LinkedIn, kind of know who they are, how long they've been with the company, what the company itself does. And then also, I want to add that even if you can add them on LinkedIn, don't try to add them on any other social media platforms.
Great point.
um, that will definitely be a little bit too much, but just know what the company stands for. Know how involved they are um, in the community. Know what normally each company has a couple nonprofits that they back. Know what those are, and have some reasons why you're interested in that company in particular. Another tip that I would suggest is having some questions already prepared. Now, some of those questions might be answered in the interview process, but writing those down will make sure that they are answered by the end of your conversation. Um, and if you don't know any questions to ask, you can always have some broad ones that interviews you always use for every interview. So, for instance, one that I always suggest is, if I do this job perfectly, what will that look like? That way, the person is already imagining you in the job, and it can give you some insight on what those expectations are that they're looking for.
That's
And
great.
then
I love that.
lastly, oh, thanks. Lastly, I would just suggest bringing some notes. I feel like people are so nervous to have anything written down. They feel like they have to have everything memorized, but that's not the case. Bringing notes actually makes you look more prepared, and bringing a pen and eagerly writing notes down and telling people that they make a good point, because that's a compliment in and of itself. People want to know that you're interested in what they say. So feel
Sure.
free to bring a notebook with a pen.
Awesome. So if I don't have like a fancy pad folio,
Mhm.
what would you recommend taking to an interview with me rather than just like a single piece of loose leaf paper?
I mean, yeah, I would, if I were anyone, I would just go get like a spiral notebook. It'd probably cost 99 cents. Don't put a bunch of stickers or crazy stuff on it. You want to be as least distracting as possible. So just have it be your interview notebook. And even if you need to keep tabs on where you're interviewing, in that notebook, it'll have everything in it. So you should definitely invest in that dollar notebook, because it can hold a lot of info for you that you'll want later.
I like the idea of having a log of everywhere you're interviewing or applied to. That way you can keep track of it. So when somebody calls you and they're like, "Hey, I'm Joe Schmo from organization," you're like, "Oh no,
You're like,
what
who?
job did I apply for?" So I
It's-
love that idea of having it all in one place and even
yes,
interview notes in one place too.
definitely,
Oh,
because right now you can click one button and apply to jobs. How many buttons will you really click? Like, you can click easily 10 10 apps, and you're not going to remember those 10 applications, but
mm-mm.
writing it down would be so easy.
Yeah, I love that. So if this is an online interview and maybe you're not going to a job interview. Obviously, the notebook, having that nearby is still a great tip. But is there anything else specifically for an online interview that might change a little bit in preparation?
Oh, definitely. You definitely want to make sure that all of your technology is working beforehand. So if you're using a phone, making sure that it's charged, that the app will open up. If you need to log on to the WebEx or whatever, making sure that that link works ahead of time, and then being logged in 5 minutes prior and just sit there, turn your camera off and make sure that it's on and that you're there so you don't miss the person is really important, because I know that being rushed is one thing that can really kind of spiral an interview out of control. But another thing that definitely just changes is distractions. They play a huge part in online interviews or anything that you're doing at home. I mean, if you've
Mhm.
if you've tried to work at home at all lately, you know that dogs and children, if you have them, and the lawnmower outside and everything can be a distraction.
Sure.
So trying to negate any of your own distractions, but also being understanding of the interview's distractions, it's just as embarrassing when a dog is barking in the background for an interviewer as it is for an interviewee. So just being understanding, and don't let that rattle you or upset you in any way when you're interviewing.
Absolutely. One other thing I want to add is things in your background. So even for this, I like flip my table around because I am working from home right now, and so
Yeah.
my back always backs up to my kitchen, and I have lots of stuff on my counter right now, and so like in meetings every day with my colleagues, I don't really worry
You don't,
about
I
that.
mean,
But
it's
when
not a
this is
huge
going on
deal.
social media or if I'm interviewing with you, I make sure that my background's not full of alcohol or posters or people. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I
I
love
mean,
those points of the noise, but also just visually what's behind you.
definitely. I am in my bedroom. And so
Perfect.
when I'm normally talking with coworkers, like you might see my deodorant in the background, but nobody
Yeah.
wants to see that during an interview. So I made
Yes.
sure that we were like completely cleaned up for our conversation.
I love it. That's so funny. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've kind of prepared for the interview. Now we're going to the interview. So again, what are your kind of best tips for in that interview? How do you set yourself apart from other candidates?
Oh my goodness. So, um, this can sometimes be kind of daunting as a recent
Mhm.
grad, especially you come out of school and you're working, but you don't have a lot to put on your resume other than your full-time job and the fact that you were in school. I
Mhm.
mean, not everyone's blessed with the situation where they can be highly active. That's where either your work experience or anything that you were doing in your spare time does come into play. Some clients will just be impressed with the fact that you were working like 30 hours a week and doing school full time. So
Mhm.
being able to speak to that is something I think that's really important. That's also where the research comes in, because being prepared will make you stand out from anybody else.
Mhm.
But one thing that I always want to note when talking with potential employees is being able to brag about yourself. I mean,
Mhm.
there's really no other time where you can. So being able to tell like hard facts, numbers, like I increased productivity in my even in my fast food job by 25%, that's amazing. Being able to say that you saved this amount of time or this amount of money, or you streamlined a process. I
Mhm.
feel like sometimes we forget how great we are when we get under the light and really think like, oh gosh, like how do I stand out from others?
Yes.
But you just have to remember the things that you can bring to the table. So reminding yourself of that. I've also suggested that when people are preparing for an interview, they right before they go into the interview, they read any of their like letters of recommendation.
Mhm.
That way they walk in during the interview very confident.
Love that.
Um, and then don't let this conversation seem more like an interrogation. So this is a normal person sitting across
Mhm.
the seat from you, and you might work directly with them if you get this job. You might interact with them on a day-to-day basis. So
Sure.
acting as if this is the most formal conversation you've ever had in your life is it kind of can psych some people out. So
Yeah,
remember that this is just a normal person, and you want to be professional and likable, and yeah, just go in with confidence, but not cockiness, and remember the balance of being professional but personable, and you'll be fine.
I like that. So one thing you mentioned was having like specific things that you want to brag about yourself to them.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that that notebook comes back into play here too,
Yeah.
right? So being able to write that down in that notebook and not, you know, I did really good at
Yeah.
this when I was in my sociology class, but being able to kind of glance every now and then and remember those
Hmm.
things that you really want to tell about yourself specifically for that job. I know that's helped me in interviews specifically to that job description versus, yeah, getting really nervous and bogged down by the formality of something versus
Yeah.
having that conversation and getting to share that little those little fun facts about yourself
Hmm.
in a way that's, you know, more personal. So I love that, and I love that the notebook came back around.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Is there anything you change about this in an online interview, or is it kind of the same?
Well, with an online interview, I think that um people feel like it's a little bit more casual.
Mhm,
So don't allowing yourself to fall into that casual rut. So if you want to stand out and everybody's um kind of in the dumps about being quarantined,
mhm,
looking the part, making sure that you are dressed as if this is your final dream job interview. For
mhm.
right off the bat, I think that speaks volumes, especially like right now. I'm not getting up every day and looking my best, you know? So if I'm interviewing someone who does look their best, I'm like, "Oh gosh, I need to step my game up," you know?
Yeah.
So, making sure that you remember that this is an interview. So,
Uh-huh.
that is really important. Let me check my notes and make sure I didn't have anything else.
Yeah, no,
Um,
perfect.
Oh, but yeah, another thing. Online interviews are so tough because you have this little box where you can see yourself and you just stare at yourself and you're like, "Oh, my hair's messed up. Is that a smudge of my makeup?" A thousand things can go through your head when you're staring at yourself. So remember to not look at yourself. Look at that
Yep.
person. Stay focused on that person. Don't worry about looking directly into the camera because that doesn't look natural. Look at them, have a conversation with them, and just stay on task with that.
I That's a great tip. I hate recording myself for anything, let alone when I
Mhm.
can see myself and it happening.
You're like,
I love that.
I know when we were talking earlier, I had a piece of hair that was like going whatever,
And you're
and
like,
I
"I don't
couldn't.
know if I should keep visiting,
Yeah,
just record it."
not
No,
professional.
absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. It's like twirling your hair when you're in an interview,
Hmm.
don't do it, but it's even worse when you're staring at yourself
And
and you
you're,
see it.
yeah,
I
definitely.
wonder
So
if you knew that you were gonna be there the whole time and you got on early and you logged on early like you talked about, you could even stick a sticky note there or just cover
yeah.
yourself up if that's even possible. Maybe something to think about for our
Hmm.
students who are watching.
And for some of the videos, if you click out of the window, it will give you another little box with just the person.
Oh,
So
cool.
at least you can get away from yourself.
Yes.
So maybe
Uh,
try that.
Worst nightmare. That's
Yeah.
funny, but I love these tips to kinda get you out of the worst nightmare situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So kinda moving out of the interview then, how do we follow up? Are you Sorry. What do employers that you work with appreciate in a follow-up? You know, there's always debate about an email versus a call versus a handwritten note. Was better for
Hmm.
you in the past. So, what are your thoughts on the follow-up?
So it for this, I would really say that it depends on the role. So I'm
Mhm,
in more of a sales position. So if I had a very passive follow up, it wouldn't seem like I would be a good salesperson, you know? So of
mhm,
course, think about that. You don't want to be overly aggressive for a position that doesn't require you to be very assertive
sure.
in your day to day. Now, with that being said, I think that two forms of follow up is will suffice. So, what I suggest to my candidates is when they get in the car or when they get home, whichever they feel comfortable with, they send me an email that I'll forward on to my client because I'm the go between in that situation. But they can send it directly to the client saying, why you appreciated their time. Talk about something in particular about the conversation that you really liked or something about the company that they had mentioned. Make it personable, but don't
Mhm.
make it several paragraphs.
Mhm.
Now, even if you are emailing from your phone in your car, you do have to ensure that this is a professional email that doesn't have any grammatical or spelling errors. So
Mhm.
if you feel uncomfortable with that, then I would say wait until you get home. But definitely follow up within the first day via email.
Okay.
Now, you can always ask how they prefer for you to follow up. If they say phone call, then definitely call.
Mhm.
But if they don't indicate and they seem like they're taking their time with making this placement, finding this perfect candidate, I would send a handwritten letter or card because nobody gets mail and it's kind of exciting to get something in the mail and it really makes people stand out in this day and age. Of course, I mean, I think that can if it's handwritten, it can take several drafts, so keep that in mind. And if you
Careful
have bad
penmanship.
handwriting, yeah, then I would suggest somebody else writing it for you if you can convince someone to of course, if you typically write in one way, I wouldn't have like hearts as on your eyes or anything, but just make sure that always professional, it's always personable to a certain extent, and it is excited about the opportunity.
Mhm. I love that. Um, so you kind of talked about a few of the things included in the follow-up, but
Mhm.
what would you say are some of the things maybe you shouldn't mention in a follow-up?
Um, I don't think that you should be terribly pushy. I mean, with that,
Mhm.
it's a fine line. Interviewing in and of itself, job searches, they're all fine lines. So you don't want to be overly pushy, and you don't want to be overly formal.
Mhm.
So if you are now, of course, I mean this for the people who are out there who tend to be formal. Kind of remember that this is somebody who you might be working next to. So
Mhm.
don't um, to say to who it may concern. You just learned that that woman's name is Mary. So, of course, Mary, thank you so much for your
Sure.
time. If Mary mentioned that she has a kid with a fever at home, tell her that you're sorry that her kid has a fever, things like that, where this is a person. So, you, of
Right.
course, want to be personable with people. But then at the same time, don't use any slang or um, don't follow up 8 times in 1 week, kind of things like that. If it would scare you off after a first date, don't do that with an interview either.
That's a great piece of advice.
Yes.
I love that. Cool. Is there anything else that you kind of want to add, or how can people get in contact with you if they have any questions? Or
Yeah. So there are a couple ways that you can get in contact with me. So I'm on LinkedIn, and I suggest everybody who is looking for their big girl or big boy job go get a LinkedIn. If you are not using it right now, you should be. If you're graduating from college, get a LinkedIn. I don't know if Erica's pushed that on you, but I definitely will because sometimes recruiters like me, that's where we find our candidates, and you're missing out if you don't have a professional social media account. So my LinkedIn is Amanda S. White. You can find that. I am with Adams and Martin Group, so that might help find me as well. But my email address is also A White, that's like the color, AWHITE, at adamsmartingroup.com. And Erica has all my contact info.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate you and your time.
Of course.
I'm sure we'll see you around campus whenever we can finally get back to campus and you can kind of start
I
popping
know.
into our events. But
Soonish.
we'll see. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Erica.